The bustling chaos of one of the busiest airports in the world swarms around him, a symphony of hurried footsteps, clattering suitcases, and distant overhead announcements. The scent of coffee and food drifts in the air, mixing with the soft hum of voices in every corner. The atmosphere is electric with impatience as travelers rush through the terminal, their eyes fixed on departure gates, minds focused on the next step of their journey. Elon Musk, his black jacket and sunglasses a familiar silhouette, moves effortlessly through the crowd. His strides are purposeful, his mind already calculating his next move, the destination of his private jet pulling him forward. The world around him seems to blur in his tunnel vision as he walks past the throngs of passengers, his entourage trailing just behind, their presence like shadows that fade into the constant motion of the airport. But even in his concentrated state, his eyes always sharp, flicker over the crowd, always alert, always scanning. And then something makes him pause. A small figure. A child. Sitting alone on a bench near the edge of the terminal, her tiny frame dwarfed by the vastness of the airport. A slight breeze ruffles her messy hair, and the faint, almost imperceptible trembling of her body catches his attention. The child, no older than 6 or 7, has tears streaking her dirt-smeared face. Her wide eyes are fixed on nothing in particular, distant and lost. A backpack, slightly unzipped, sits on the floor beside her. She clutches it like it's the only thing holding her together in the whirlwind of the crowd. Elon's breath catches for a moment. In the midst of the frantic movement, the hurried passengers, and the endless noise of the airport, she is an anomaly, still, silent, unnoticed by everyone. A few airport staff members glance her way, but their gaze flickers over her with indifference, their minds preoccupied with their responsibilities. The child doesn't register as an emergency to them. No one stops to help. Dion asks, the world continues to spin around her, and yet she remains alone, abandoned in the middle of the rush. But not to Elon. Something inside him stirs. A gut feeling, a strange recognition. There's something familiar about the look on her face. A silent cry for help that pulls at him, tugs at something deep within him. It's a feeling he can't explain, but it grips him nonetheless. His instinct, honed over the years in high-pressure situations, tells him this is not just another fleeting moment. This child, this encounter, means something. He takes a step forward, his body cutting through the crowd with purpose. The noise of the terminal fades into the background as his focus narrows. With each step, the unease in his chest grows. Who would leave a child here? Who would walk away and leave her to fend for herself in a place like this? As he reaches her side, he crouches down to her level, careful not to startle her. He's no stranger to confrontation, to solving problems, but this feels different. The child's eyes, wide and full of uncertainty, flick to him. She's not sure whether to trust him, not sure if she should even speak. But the silence between them feels heavy, like an unspoken bond that neither of them can break. "Hey, are you okay?" Elon's voice, usually firm with purpose, softens as he asks the question. There's a tenderness to his words, a concern that surprises even him. He's not asking if she's hurt, but if she's okay in a deeper sense. If anyone could understand the loneliness that accompanies being lost in a sea of people, it would be him. The world has always felt overwhelmingly loud to him, full of expectations and pressures, and for a moment he wonders if she, too, feels small in this sea of strangers. Her eyes flicker toward him, the terror in them undeniable. She opens her mouth, but the words seem to catch in her throat, trapped behind the invisible wall of fear that holds her prisoner. Elon watches, waiting. He can see it in her, this raw vulnerability. The tension in her small body is palpable, as if she's expecting him to disappear at any moment. Like everyone else has, the crowd moves around them, a blur of faces and voices. But here, in this moment, they are the only two people in the room. For a long, heavy moment, neither of them speaks. The bustling terminal seems so distant now, the noise becoming a dull roar, as if the universe has shrunk to just the two of them. Elon watches the girl closely, noting the way her tiny fingers grip the straps of her backpack, her lifeline in the sea of uncertainty. Her gaze shifts toward the crowd, but no one notices her. No one stops to offer help. It's as though she's invisible to the world. And that realization strikes him like a bolt of lightning. But not to him, not today. He reaches out slowly, gently placing his hand on her shoulder, a small gesture that speaks volumes. Her body tenses at first, and for a fleeting moment he wonders if she'll pull away. But she doesn't. Instead, her eyes lock onto his, desperate, unsure, but also hopeful. Hopeful that maybe, just maybe, she's found someone who sees her, someone who won't let her slip through the cracks. "Don't worry," Elon says softly, his voice a quiet promise in the midst of the chaos. "I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone." For a moment, time seems to stop. The weight of his words lingers between them, a bond forged in the simplest of promises. The world around them continues unabated. People rush past, oblivious to the exchange unfolding in their midst, but in this small corner of the terminal, everything fades away. Elon's mind races, but now it's with clarity. This moment, this child, it's not a coincidence. Something in him knows he can't turn away. He has to stay, and he has to do something. And so he does. The questions swirl in his mind. Where are her parents? Why is she here, alone in this vast, overwhelming place? But more than that, he knows he has a responsibility now. This is his moment to act. It's not about the business deals, the billions, or the future of his companies. It's about making a difference in this small, fragile moment. In a world that moves too fast, sometimes the greatest acts of courage are the smallest. Elon's mind raced, every instinct screaming that this was no ordinary encounter. The crowd around them moved in a blur, their footsteps quick and unthinking, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the corner of the terminal. He looked down at the child, her small body trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. Her wide, scared eyes locked onto his, and for the briefest moment, Elon felt a strange pull, as though fate had brought him here at this very second. He knelt down to her level, his voice softer now, more genuine. "You're not alone. Can you tell me where your parents are?" The child's lip quivered, a silent battle raging in her young heart. The words came out barely above a whisper, trembling in the space between them. I don't know where they went. I was waiting for them, but they didn't come back." The tears that had been welling in her eyes now spilled down her cheeks, streaking through the dirt and the confusion, leaving her face streaked with sorrow. The weight of her words hit him like a punch. This wasn't a lost child who had simply wandered away from her family. This was something far worse. She had been abandoned. A chill crawled up his spine, but he pushed it down, forcing himself to focus. He needed to act, to do something. His thoughts were a blur, but he knew one thing for sure: this child needed him. Elon pulled out his phone, dialing his head of security. His voice, when it crackled through the phone, was taut with urgency. "I need you to check something for me. Find out who this girl is. Check every flight record, every passenger, if she has parents on file. Anything. I need to know who she is." "Right away, sir," came the reply, and the line clicked dead as the security team got to work. But as he waited, time seemed to stretch and distort. Every second felt like an eternity. The girl beside him, her tiny body curled in on itself, clutched her backpack like it was a lifeline. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke volumes. Elon watched her carefully, his heart aching for her, as she sat there, lost and alone in the middle of a world that seemed too busy to care. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket, the sound breaking the heavy silence. Elon answered quickly, his heartbeat quickening. "What did you find?" There was a moment of silence on the other end before the security head responded. "Sir, there's nothing. No flight, no booking, no parents listed. This child wasn't supposed to be here." Elon's blood went cold. For a moment it felt like the ground beneath him had vanished. No booking, no parents, no trace of this child's existence in the system at all. A sickening realization began to sink in. Someone had left her here on purpose. Abandoned her. The horror of it hit him hard, like a slap to the face. He could feel his chest tighten, his mind racing through 1,000 different scenarios, but all of them had one thing in common: cruelty. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate act of heartless abandonment. He glanced down at the little girl, still trembling beside him. Her small hand had found its way to his jacket, clutching it tightly as if seeking some semblance of comfort from the only person who had acknowledged her. The weight of her trust settled on him like an unspoken vow. She was looking at him now, searching his eyes for something, anything, that would tell her it was going to be okay. Elon's gaze softened, the fire of determination building inside him. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder, a silent promise that he would not let her slip away, not into the cold, unforgiving world. "We're going to figure this out," he said, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of something deeper, something unshakable. "You're safe now." But, as those words left his mouth, he couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning. The more he thought about the situation, the more he realized just how dangerous it could become. Someone had left her here for a reason, and Elon had no intention of letting it go until he uncovered the truth. The airport, with all its lights and noise, had never felt so oppressive. It was a vast, impersonal space, a maze of glass and steel, full of travelers who were too caught up in their own worlds to notice the girl sitting all alone. But Elon wasn't like the others. He wouldn't let her become just another forgotten face in the crowd. He would find out who did this. He would make sure this child was no longer invisible. And he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. Elon paced restlessly, his mind spinning with questions and uncertainties. His thoughts, usually calm and calculated, were now filled with a sense of unease that gnawed at him relentlessly. Emily, this lost, frightened little girl, had no records, no identity, no family to speak of. The more he tried to rationalize the situation, the more wrong it seemed. It felt like a cruel puzzle, the pieces never fitting. Who would leave a child in this position? And why? These questions circled his mind like vultures. But the answers remained just out of reach. His team moved quickly, taking control of the situation with practiced efficiency, but Elon couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary case. His instinct was sharp, and it told him that there was something deeply sinister hidden beneath the surface of what seemed like a simple abandonment. He couldn't just walk away from it, not when the child's future was uncertain, and not when there was a larger story unfolding in the shadows, one he had yet to uncover. Unfortunately, his decision, though sudden, was unwavering. "I'm taking her home with me," he declared, his voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. There was no hesitation in his words. He wasn't just acting on a whim. He knew, deep down, that this was the only choice. His team exchanged wary glances, but they knew better than to question his authority. They had seen his resolve before. "Find out everything you can. Contact the authorities, the media, everyone. I'm not leaving this child behind." Elon turned toward his private jet, Emily walking beside him, her small hand clutching his as if he were the last anchor in a storm she couldn't understand. He glanced down at her as they walked. Her face, once etched with fear, had begun to soften, her wide eyes now filled with curiosity rather than terror. "Are we going to my new home?" she asked, her voice soft and tentative, tinged with a strange sense of hope. The innocence in her question struck him like a blow to the chest, and for the briefest of moments he was speechless. He had seen many things in his life: billion-dollar deals, rocket launches, technological breakthroughs, but nothing had prepared him for this connection. He had expected to feel the weight of responsibility, of obligation, but instead there was an unfamiliar peace. It was as if the universe itself had aligned to bring him here, to this moment. It was as if Emily had always been meant to be part of his life, though he couldn't explain why. His usual instincts, the ones that had guided him through countless high-stakes decisions, told him that something monumental was about to unfold, not just for Emily, but for him as well. As the jet soared high above the clouds, Elon found himself lost in thought, his gaze drifting out the window as the world below grew smaller. Emily sat beside him, her small form curled in a seat far too large for her. For the first time in years, Elon felt a strange sense of peace, as though the chaos of his life had finally slowed, if only for a moment. The hum of the engines, the soft murmur of his team in the background, everything felt distant and unimportant in comparison to the girl beside him. But the weight of the situation still hung heavily on his shoulders. The uncertainty of Emily's past, the mystery that surrounded her, and the realization that he was now responsible for her future. It was a lot to carry. But as the miles passed and the plane moved steadily toward his private estate, Elon couldn't help but feel that this was no ordinary journey. This was a turning point. For both of them. The process tore into it. The ride following the journey up to the mainland, and then to Aspen Peak. As they approached his estate, the world below became a blur of green and brown, vast stretches of land giving way to the sprawling grounds that would soon become Emily's new home. Elon's heart raced as he looked down at her once more, her small face full of wonder, as if she could already sense the significance of the moment. This wasn't just a new home for her. This was a new life. And then, just as they touched down on the runway, the buzz of the outside world crept in. The news outlets had already caught wind of the story. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur, had taken in a strange, abandoned child. The headlines were already being written, the questions already being asked. Why would he do such a thing? Was this a publicity stunt? A desperate act of charity? But for Elon, the answer was clear. It wasn't about business or headlines, fame or fortune. It was about doing what no one else could. It was about offering a child who had been left in the cold a chance at a future that she deserved, a future that, perhaps, was meant to be intertwined with his own. As the jet came to a halt, Elon stepped out first, his feet touching the tarmac with a sense of finality. Emily followed, looking up at him with those wide, trusting eyes, her expression a mix of uncertainty and hope. She had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain: her life and Elon's would never be the same again. This wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something far bigger, something that would change both of their lives in ways they couldn't yet understand. And as they walked toward the house, Elon knew, without a doubt, that he had made the right choice. As Elon and Emily stepped into the unknown together, their futures now intertwined, one question lingered in the air. What happens next? This story isn't just about a billionaire's decision to help a lost child. It's about the power of compassion, the strength of unexpected bonds, and the potential to change lives when we dare to step beyond our comfort zones. Now, it's your turn to be part of this incredible journey. What do you think would happen if we all made choices like Elon's? Could one act of kindness truly transform the world around us? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more heart-stirring tales that challenge, inspire, and captivate. Every story has the power to change something in you. Don't miss the next one. Let's continue this journey together.